Hello. I guess last session of the day. I guess you're all tired, so I'll try to keep this not too long. Let's try to save question toward the end so I can zoom in through the presentation, because usually I try to make it interactive, but given the time constraints, we might, not finish everything on time. My name is Giuliano, as Frank said. I'm originally from Rome. I moved here now 5 years ago, so not too long. I don't consider myself a tourist anymore here because I lived here for 5 years, but I've been spending time here for the last decade at the end of the day because I was running a startup before. Originally, I'm a software engineer, but always had interest in doing side projects, things like that. And one of these ended up turning into a company that eventually was acquired by Apple 5 years ago. Okay, when you have non-Apple product and integration, it's not that great, but that's for another talk. Just to set expectation, because everyone has been saying great things, just want to make sure that you're prepared for what's coming, what this presentation is about and what it's not about. It's 100% of personal opinions, okay? So don't take anything as a voice of God or anything like that. It's not a career advice. It's not a list of things to do, nor a recipe for success, right? And it's not even well rehearsed, so just be prepared for me to fumble the ball quite a lot of times. The most important takeaway, though, is the following, is that we might have questions, you might ask things about. I can give you advice, I'll be happy to do it, but the most important thing you gotta keep in mind is that my advice is free, you pay the price for your decision. So don't hold me accountable of that, and always keep that in mind with anyone you talk to anyway, right? You can ask for advice, but be mindful of where that advice is coming from. There's a lot of things to take into account when it comes to that. My journey in a nutshell is the following, the startup journey specifically. Started around 2013 when we were tinkering with some product ideas. We started from Italy. We had the development team in Italy for the entire journey and the life cycle of the company. We had engineering team there. The fact that I was a former software engineer allowed me to source young software engineer right off their graduation after the university. So it was a good way to source early startup members, team members, to build a product that we ended up building. So we started our journey of growing and getting some support and funding through London, through some fairly large hubs for startup in Europe. We weren't yet able to come across the ocean and spend time here. It was too much of a far shot, no connection, it's really expensive. So we started from that. So London has been our base camp to begin our climb to Mount Everest. Eventually we got into an acceleration program in here in San Francisco. It was called 500 Startup. It still exists. 10 years ago was way more relevant than it is today. Right now, YC basically had 95% of the market from that perspective. It's pretty dominant, but back then it was great, and 500 Startup have a strong emphasis on diversity of founders or where they were coming from. So they would source companies from all across the world way more easily than YC used to do back then. Created the company, so we were running the company, managed to work with both small and medium-sized business all the way to the largest one, and ended up being acquired by Apple now 5 years ago, which made me move for good in here with my family. Now, what's important about the startup journey is that the average narrative is anchored to a myth that I want to make sure you take with a grain of salt. Right? The myth is basically the following. At some point, there is some random person who gets an incredible idea, maybe while it's under the shower. It gets with another group of random people into a garage to start cranking out some stuff all together. Then they go to an investor, which tells them this is a great idea and throws millions of dollars at them, just to go ahead and do whatever they want to. And fast forward a few years, they are self-made multi-billionaire, and they're an incredible success story, which happens. But for every guy like this one that you have here, there are hundreds of thousands of people that crash into a wall and crash and burn and die. And you need to be very mindful of that. It's great to celebrate the success story, but all the noise and the media coverage that this type of stories get, largely outshine everything else that happens in the space and all the people that try to do those things. The reality is quite different, or at least my reality was quite different. 99% of my time while running the company for about 6 years was basically spending time with this mood. We're solving something that wasn't working, or we weren't hitting the goals on time, or the product wasn't having the right metrics. There was always something freaking that we have to rush and take care of because there was something on fire, whether you don't have enough metrics or you were delaying with the releases that you hope you were able to do by a certain timeline and you weren't able to. You were running out of cash. You need to find more investors. You need to make connection. It's a lot of stuff. There is a lot of networking at play while you do that, as Frank said before. So the journey is quite intense, right? Especially from an emotional perspective. You go through this mood swings where, everything looks great at the moment. So you might have some wins and you see that this is the best thing I could ever be thinking about. It's going great. Some others, and instead it seems like nothing is working. Why the hell you even started doing that? And there is a lot of pressure because you feel the responsibility of people you're working with, your team, the investors you get money from, and all of that. And if you look at this chart, the part that is inaccurate, it is that you spend way more time, at least I spend way more time in the lows of this chart than in the highs. So sometimes you get some wins and you were super happy about it. It gives you a boost of energy. But then the day after, there's already some shit going on. And the problem is that while you go through this process, you always have this feeling that, okay, I'll do this next one thing, and I'm sure that will unlock whatever milestone. I'm gonna secure that customer, and the other three will follow. I'm gonna talk with this investor if I secure the meeting, and I close that one, I'll close the round. Or after I do this, I can, there is always some milestone that you believe is gonna change the course of, or the trajectory of your company. The problem is that while you're mining, you don't really have an understanding of how far you are, right? Because then you cross the milestone and then you realize that it wasn't generating the result you were expected to, so now you focus on the next one and on the next one. But while you do all of that, you need to be mindful of the opportunity cost of that, right? While doing the startup means saying no to a lot of other things, including maybe having way more, maybe less exciting, so to speak, careers, but maybe way more profitable and secure, right? You're still I spent 6 years doing that. It's not a short time horizon. So that's very important. So while you go to that motion, you constantly have that in mind, and it's hard to manage because you don't. Giving it up means acknowledging that you failed, which it's not trivial to do, especially if you come from an Italian culture where failure is seen as something that is a stigma that marks you for life. And everyone who told you to just go to get a 9-to-5 permanent job for the rest of your life was the safe and smart thing to do. And so you try to avoid that as much as possible. But let's get into building product a little bit. Probably none of you knows what the company used to do, but what the product and the company that ended up being acquired by Apple was basically a solution to integrate services. Services, I mean application, business application, like, I don't know, Salesforce, ServiceNow, MailChimp, all these software as a service products that are used by organizations that are now proliferated in any company. There are a lot of them. All of them have APIs. I don't know if you know what APIs are, but this is just a way for software to exchange data. Our product would just make much more simpler and faster to integrate those solutions with one another while defining the logic of the things that you want to happen in between. But it was quite a journey to get there. When we started, we were doing something completely different early on in Italy. Think about it, was 2013, so it's more than 10 years ago now. And there was quite a significant amount of activity happening on social back then. All these social platforms specifically, and namely either Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, would allow you to host application in there. So brands were very eager to experiment new format when it comes to finding campaigns to engage with customers, whether those are sweepstakes or promos. And we were seeing there was some formats that were very recurring. So we thought, if brands have to create new software every time they have to do something like that or engage with agencies to do it, we can probably streamline the process by create templates or formats that are pre-programmed that only need some degree of customization in it, and let them just refine what it takes to send a campaign live. Felt immediately pretty excited about the idea because it felt there was a there. So we were just, okay, let's do it. Let's just build it. Took about 2 months to start building most of that stuff to have a version of that product up and running. And then when we were ready to launch, this is pretty much how it went. We took it, we presented it to the market, and we literally had to throw it away. And the main reason for that was realizing too late that the market opportunity for that thing was too small. It was hard to raise money with that story. Venture capital go after opportunity that can generate incredibly amount of return in terms of multiplier effect on their investment. The VC game is pretty much a numbers game. So out of 100 or so investment, only a handful of them pay off for everything else and beyond. So every single opportunity they look at needs to be significantly large in terms of market opportunity and the type of exit it could generate for them, whether that exit happens in private or public markets. So then again, this was the mood, right? Yeah, you work on it, you realize that you wasted 2 months doing something completely stupid. That you could have the main problem is that only after you do it, you realize that you could have saved you a lot of time and pain by thinking about the problem, going about a problem differently. Because essentially, you should always try to develop as less as possible before testing the market. A founder was much smarter about it, and it's a very popular case study about this, was Drew Houston. Have you heard that name? No. Dropbox. When Dropbox started, they did one thing. They didn't build the product. They made a video. And you can still find it on YouTube. It's called Dropbox Demo. It's a 15 years old video or something like that. Now, the video doesn't play here. You can go and look it up. Those are 5 minutes well spent. What they did is they mod completed the product. The product didn't exist. They made a video that pretended that the product was already made and was working. They put it there. They targeted the tech community of people that would be early adopters of cloud technology and sharing data. And the video would then point you to a landing page where you would subscribe for having early access to the beta whenever that would become available. And they got overnight from 5,000 sign-up that they managed to collect so far to 75,000 overnight. That's a good leading indicator that there is enough demand for something that you try to build without writing a single line of code, which is a way more efficient and smart way to go about it. So this is a good case study. If you Google about it, there's plenty of literature of using this approach and specifically about the Dropbox story. Now, we didn't do it the smart way, so we went back to the drawing board. And we were still strongly believing that there was an opportunity in making more efficient the process of software development, whatever you were supposed to do. So instead of creating way more rigid, pre-made, full-stack application to deliver campaigns, we changed the level of abstraction. And we thought about providing a platform that would allow you to create application by composing services with one another. Many applications today are anyway the result of a composition of services to send emails, to transact payments, to send SMS messages, to integrate with CRM, and all. You can think about plenty of other options. So our tool would basically take care primarily of the back end of your application and allow you to have all these integrations available and define the logic of the back end, so that the flow that would happen, like whenever a new user sign up, sending a welcome email or something like that, it was mostly visual. You didn't have to take care about the code, maintaining the API integration, nor of the uptime, because we would host all of that for you in the cloud. And it was definitely a way to extend by a lot the addressable market for that. Because right now we wouldn't constrain anymore by a specific vertical of type of solution for a given market in a given industry, but it was pretty much a toolbox at this point that would allow you to have building blocks. We like to say that we were the Lego blocks for the APIs, right? So you can just compose them and assemble them. So same approach. Oh, this is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and build it. And we built a lot into that, right? You see that the UI had a lot of section and things that you could do, because while we were building it, we could think about all the possible stuff that people would have want to realize with the platform, compounded by the problem that as a former software engineer, I tended to project myself a lot into the type of developer that would have used it. So probably was overthinking a lot of stuff. And 3 months later, we launched it. And the interesting part was we built way too much before we're shipping it. And you'll be surprised at how customer can react and use something that you think is obvious, right? When you build it to you, everything seems so obvious. Like those are sections, every section has a purpose. And so you expect them to get in there with a minimum onboarding, get to do whatever they get to do. The problem is that you don't realize the blind spot that you develop when you're the one building the product, right? So that's why you want to be a little bit more mindful when it comes to shipping early and frequently, even if you don't think it's done yet. The product will never be done anyway. There is no getting around it, right? So once again, that was kind of the mood, but the key here is that you got to learn early and learn often and figure out what are the right type of experiments or tactics that you can deploy to best inform your next steps when you develop features or extend functionality of your solution. A good read on the subject, it goes way beyond product building. This is also about the business model of your company, or organization. It's this. I use it as a library of experiments that could be done in order to test the water on some stuff that you want to do, whether it's a value proposition, a campaign, an actual feature, or a new product idea. This book has it's part of a series. This one is good, and it's pretty actionable. Again, you don't expect to find all the answers to your problem in here, but it's a good reference model to have. Essentially, though, when you're building product, your goal is pretty much this, right? Which is the pursuit of product market fit. I'm sure you heard this word before. At least this week, someone must have mentioned that. What happened? Okay, I don't know what happened. And product market fit meaning finding a product who is desirable, which means our customers are willing to pay for it, okay? It is feasible, so it means that you and your team have to be able to build it. And then it's viable, which means that you can meet their expectation at the price they're willing to pay while building it with the resource you need, while still being profitable, being able to have a business that makes sense. Now, there is a part of the thread that could be had, and oftentimes startups do not care about, well, most times startups in early stage do not care about profitability, which is fine. You need to move fast. You need to optimize for profitability from day one, but yet you need to prove that eventually that's going to be a viable business, right? So that's really important. And that was pretty much one of the key part of the journey for us, as we kept iterating on the product, understanding what would really matter for our customers, being more comfortable in shipping frequently and fast, and not wait to be perfect, right? There's this famous quote that just waiting for perfect is never as smart as making progress. And there's another one that sometimes could be misleading, but though, so if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you'll launch too late. So you shouldn't be concerned about rejection or things not taking off ground. This is another famous related quote by Steve Blank, which is get out of the building. You need to get out there in front of customers and see if they're willing to use it successfully, and eventually pay for it. That's the only thing that matters. Everything else is just fantasy in your mind, right? This goes a lot into the discipline of product management. At the end of the day, when you're early running a startup and building a product, there is a lot that overlaps with what a product manager does in an organization, a product organization, which today is my job. I'm a head of product for the product team of a division of Apple, which is the closest type of role within a corporate to what I was used to do before. Product is at the intersection of go-to-market, sales, support, engineering, design, and we basically try to set the direction for where the product is supposed to go, what to build and why, so that the company can grow. And this is the last reading recommendation. I don't know if you know this author. Marty Kagan is super popular on this subject. There's another series of books that are very good reads. Again, no secret sauce in there or answers. This is one of a series of 4, I think, right now. This is the one I would recommend to start from. There is a lot of good thinking about how you should define product, how you want to think about the capabilities that should be captured, and in most cases, how should those features should be advocated for in a corporate environment, which might not be necessarily what you need when you're running a startup, but still there's good information in there. Now, another set of lessons learned along the way. Don't think the product will sell itself, okay? Business, at the end of the day, is 80% sales, right? There is a popular quote in US, which is, everyone works in sales, even if they don't realize it, right? And it's great to think about this, SaaS product, you put it up there, there's a free trial, people go there, sign up, use the product, they like it, swipe the credit card. Everything is self-service, you just have to collect money, which happens. But ultimately, especially early on, you need to be out there to understand why they're purchasing, whether they will be willing to give you more money compared to what you're asking for. There is a lot to be done there. And as a person who was coming from a software engineering background, never been a sales guy, to me, it was a very hard to do, right? I would just defer everything to the product to sell itself and never try to get out there and actually selling deals, at least not in the beginning, until I realized that I had no alternative, basically. So that was important. And what it was interesting to learn is that you can sell what you haven't built yet, right? And usually, at least from an engineering mindset that I used to have, way more than I have now, I would say, okay, I'll build it, I have it, I sell it. The reality is that in many cases, you can, again, mock what you're gonna have, even get early access, so see if people are even willing to commit to pay money for you or have a down payment for something. And so you should always try to collect a nickel or a dime whenever you had the chance. Professional network makes all the difference in the world, especially when you're running at least your first company. Frank spoke about it, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but there is a popular saying that is, first-time founders are obsessed with product, second-time founders are obsessed with distribution, which is to put emphasis on the fact that the larger and the stronger your network, the higher the odds of succeeding, whether it comes to business development, doing partnership, hiring, fundraising, all of that. If you have more connection, a stronger network, your odds of success grow by at least an order of magnitude. I think you're going through this week where I understand you've been exposed to a lot of different stories. So hearing stories from people that have gone through the same journey or struggle, it's very valuable. Again, take it with a grain of salt. Every single company is its own unique story because of who's been running it, the team they had it, what they were trying to do, at what point in time, with market condition. There is a shit ton of variables at play every single time. So it's not that because guy X did that, I'm gonna do the same because it worked for him. But it's important to be able to relate to the problem that those people have. Number one, so you're not gonna feel alone when you face them. And number two, because you can think about maybe how that person approached the problem and see if there is an analog. Then if the solution is exactly the same, that's even better. So it's great to have exposure to this data and the stories. Just make sure that you don't take it as a secret sauce for success. Then there is the critical aspect of any company that can go anywhere, which is the team, right? Talent wins games, but it's teamwork and intelligence that wins championships. The fact that the person is going to have to everyone else who's way more committed, is putting 110% of their time and passion into their work, and they will see someone who's not holding to the same standard, and then maybe you don't address immediately, and you're not visible about it. They will think that it's okay, that behavior is accepted within the organization. Why they should work 20% more while maybe getting paid the same if the guy can get away with half of the effort, right? I had one resource at some point in our company, and I got exactly that. I say, okay, but it will change. I can motivate him. I can work with him. He wasn't working, and the effect on the rest of the team was evident at some point until I finally and eventually took action. And then there's the communication. Communication absolutely is fundamental. Being able to tell the story about a company, why does it matter when it comes to speak to either a customer or investors, it's very, very a critical skill for anyone who's a founder specifically. Little digression for the Italian audience. In Italy, we have the tendency of being very poor education related to English. So most people that get out of school can barely speak English in an almost embarrassing way. If you want to play in this league, there is no getting around of speaking proper English. I'm not saying that I'm fluent. I think I'm understandable. But for the Italian people in here, you need to be able to speak English as well as you speak Italian. Otherwise, do not waste your time. You will think that you're conveying a message that is not landing because they can barely understand what you're saying, even if you think you're saying the right things. They will just not understand. Okay? This is just for the Italian. I'm sure that everyone else is totally fine with English. And last thing, this is more about, again, going through the journeys is emotionally intense. And only after you go through problems, whether those are win or lose or losses, is that you only, in hindsight, you realize that nothing is ever as bad or as good as it seems the moment you experience it. We would go through the journey and maybe win some deals and think that was the best thing could ever happen. Moving forward 6 months, it was just one other step in a way. And similar for something that went wrong, right? We blew up a meeting, or we didn't close with an investor that we thought we were getting along and maybe able to get him to sign us a check. And it was always, always amplify in your mind the effect of those things, whether it was good or bad. The reality is that it's much less than that when you pass through it. A good tactic to get around it so you're not trapped into your head is to create your own advisory board. Meaning, select a handful of people, or people, of course, friends or professional acquaintances, whatever, people you trust that can help you assess a situation in a more rational way. Because when you're going through it and you're the person who's the one is involved with the matter, the emotion will cloud your judgment, no matter what. So a way to have a escape hatch and have a more objective and more impartial assessment of the situation can come from people that have no skin in the game. So that's a good way to go about it. And also what you think about it, sometimes, well, most of the time, you're in control of your destiny only to some extent, right? Market dynamics will always trump individual performance. So everything is never all your merit or demerit, so to speak, right? It's not entirely your fault or your merit if things go wrong. In our case, when we closed the acquisition and we were acquired, part of that was due to the fact that the specific market we were in at that point in time was consolidating. So companies like ours were getting scooped up by larger company. So there was a timing factor. If I could have not gotten there at all, maybe I could have finished money earlier, run out of cash. I was still alive with a decent product at that point in time, and the market condition helped us. I haven't sold the company because I'm special. Company do not get sold, company get acquired. And the reason in our case to get acquired was that type of technology was relevant to a specific vertical. Apple has a division that cares about the vertical. We ended up being acquired. Now, before I jump into this next section, I know that this tends to be a subject of interest about raising funds. Raise your hand if you're really interested about a subject so I can meter how much I'm gonna spend time on this section. I know there are some founders in here. Okay, roughly 50% of the audience-ish. All right, good for me to go? It's 4:30. I think I'm on track to finish in a decent time. So fundraising sucks. I mean, at least it sucked for me, for a variety of reasons. Fundraising in here particularly was very difficult. Coming here at the beginning, no network, early product, little traction. Being convinced that I was conveying a story, speaking English that only now I realized was not as good as I thought it was. It was still understandable. I raised money, but I'm sure that some of my English back then worked against me. Anyway, number one pitch enemy when you're telling your story: attention, right? Whenever you tell a story or you host every type of talk, the most important thing that you need to do is be able to capture people's attention. Now, I don't know how good of a job I'm doing right now, but one of the reasons why I don't have any text in here, because people read slides when you talk and they stop following you. And I am very egocentric, so I want all the attention, though I don't put any word in there, so maybe you just look at a picture and then you listen to me. Now, I realize you cannot do probably that when you're pitching your company to an investor, but the matter is that you want to make sure that you have compelling amount of information delivered with a right cadence so that you keep the attention high. Otherwise, you're at risk of getting that person to acknowledge what you're doing. You get maybe mixed signals that the person is following you. The reality is that he tuned you out an hour ago and you lost it, right? And maybe you don't understand why that person hasn't followed up. And you're basically burning an opportunity by yourself. Maybe that person would have been a good fit for whatever you were trying to do, but if your story doesn't land, you're pretty much screwed, okay? A good way to try to get people to understand very quickly what you're doing, especially if you're running a company, is using analogy, piggybacking on stuff that is very well known, right? Again, I told you before, we used to say we're Lego for APIs. If you know what APIs are, and we were obviously pitching an audience that were familiar with the subject, you immediately get what we're trying to do, right? Similar analogy, we're Uber for babysitter. There is nothing to explain, right? It's a marketplace, two-sided, you understand the model. You probably need to wrap up your mind around how many people wants a babysitter versus how many people are in need for an Uber ride. I guess the latter is much larger. But you don't have to explain anything. It's incredibly powerful. So if you have a way to frame whatever you're pitching in that way, people's brain works with pattern recognition and understand analogies. So this is a much quicker way in 5 words to explain 90% of what you wanted to explain and what your product was trying to do for who. Fundraising is also a shit ton of work. And I'll tell you why. In order to get to close an investment, which is the bottom of this funnel, you're familiar with this funnel? Things like sales, like top of the funnel, all that. The rule of thumb that we were told when we were here for the first time trying to raise money is that in order to close an investment round, you need roughly 100 meetings. 100 meetings means meeting with 100 people. How many of you have a list of 100 investors that could be pitched today? Not many. Number one, this goes back to network. But assuming you have a network, you still need intros to these people, right? Someone to introduce you to it, to break through the noise of their inbox and get their attention. Otherwise, it's much harder. You can do it, it's just even harder. So let's assume that you're very lucky and every 3 introductions, 2 are landing, meaning you get a meeting out of 2 meetings out of 3 introductions, which is very high. So I'm being super optimist here, okay? And you cannot just go to one person, ask that person for 20 intro. You will not spend the social capital that way, right? So you want to be balanced, to balance out how many intro you're gonna ask to who. So let's say that you can ask up to 3 intro to every single individual you know. You still need roughly 50 people to get 150 people introduced to you, that maybe gets you 100 meetings, that maybe gets you to close an investment round, okay? So this is work. This is a full-time job in itself, and while you do all of that, you need to run your company, build a product, build a team, sell your product, provide customer support, and everything else, and maybe also live while you do all of that, right? There is also that. and sleep occasionally. Occasionally. And for every single meeting, you just cannot go there and have a copy-paste version of your story. I mean, the bulk of the story will be the same. It's your story. But when you get into the meeting, especially when you start dealing with VC funds, you need to understand who you're talking to, right? Every VC fund is structured in a way. And they could be more focused on early stage investment or later stage investment. They might be at some point of the life cycle of a fund, right? So maybe they're a fund that invests in your sector at your stage, but the last time they raised a fund to invest in companies was 4 years ago. That likely means that they don't have any longer capital for new investment, because a fund usually is structured in a way where part of the money will be used to enter the participation into a company. The remainder of that amount of the fund is used to make sure that for the investment that seems to be going well, they can keep adding money into the company to preserve the prorated amount of the stake of the company that they own in terms of equity, right? So whenever you don't just reach out to random anything that says investor in this LinkedIn profile, right? You need to understand whether that person might understand your subject matter. Maybe they have already investment in similar companies, so you might be a competitive investment. And maybe good or not good to have that meeting, because if they have already invested in the space, they probably might not want to have a second one. Maybe having the meeting can just basically provide free intelligence to the other company the person has already invested in, right? And so there is a lot of work that you need to do before you get there. And if you can adjust your pitch according to the background of that person, that will increase your amount of success in terms of at least being listed in full. From the fund perspective, similar story. Sorry, I mixed it up when I was going over that. So fund could be, you need to understand what is the size, right? If you're raising a couple of $1 million and you're looking at funds that have raised hundreds of them, they're not going to deploy $1 million at a time, right? It's not just about how much money they have to deploy, but it's about how much people they have on their teams to then follow those companies, and how many companies each person in that fund can take care of the companies they've invested into, right? So you need to find the right fit when it comes to type of check size they make, life cycle of the fund, vertical. If they do, some funds are focused on health tech, some other could be something else. And then again, the life cycle of the fund. Also, who you're meeting with matters a lot, right? If someone below partner level, they have all these titles, you need to take the meeting accordingly. There are people that are more or less in a position to make a decision in terms of an investment. And last but not least, you need to know, it seems obvious, but you need to know your company inside out and master your numbers, because they're going to grill you on that. And depending on where you are with your company, you might want to put emphasis on one thing rather than another one, right? If you're confident about your traction and you're generating revenue in a meaningful way, you put that up front, right? You need to go straight into that. You bring it up very early, and you're very specific, right? We found it 2 years ago, and right now we're doing 2 million run rate, something like that. If metrics are weak, then you will probably try to control the narrative in a different way and try to speak for the size of the opportunity. Try to get their appetite by thinking about how big the opportunity for the fund could be in case you're the right company to invest in that space in terms of market size. The important thing is how you plan around it. I show you the funnel, which is really about running a process, as you need to understand how you want to go about getting that introduction with the right type of people that you have search for, and you need to do a lot of research before attacking this type of task. And things won't go as you probably planned, but as been said by people who are way more wiser than me, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Just the exercise of going through the thinking about how you're going to go approaching a problem, it's super valuable. You might want to strategize in a way that when you start getting to a place that you're securing meeting with those people, maybe you front load the funds that you think are less of a fit, or the one that you're less likely, you just say you're less interested in, right? Your early meetings will likely be more shitty, so to speak, right? This is going to be the first time you're telling your story. You don't know yet what type of questions will be coming your way. So it's the more you go through the motion of having those meetings, the better you get at it, right? So even some thinking about just not take the meeting because it's coming your way. You want to manage them out. Make sure that they move along your process at the same given time, right? So that when you start generating interest, hopefully you're in a place where you have interest by a handful of people. You're not just starting from scratch with some other ones. Because if you can manage to keep them on the same stage of your conversation, you can get in a place where you have more leverage. Because if someone is about to sign or money showing interest in your deal or your round, you can use that to signal to someone who's at the same stage of analysis and due diligence of your company to say, hey, it's great that you're thinking about it, but I have interest and commitment about this round, and think I'm moving ahead with that. You're gonna have the ability to put pressure in a condition where you normally don't have a lot of leverage, because those are the guys who have the money. So your day basically goes by sending hundreds of emails, literally hundreds. Even when you start getting intros or you try to do cold reach to people, you're not the only one trying to get their attention, right? And so in most cases, your emails won't get any response. And it's important to keep in mind that it's not that they respond. Probably the most likely reason for not responding to you is they haven't even seen your email, right? They haven't even that's why usually the intro is important, so that the sender is someone that they know, because they're gonna scan through an inbox of 100 messages, and they're not gonna go by one, top to bottom. They scan through it, see if there is anything important from people they know, and they select that one, and then everyone follows. And during the process, if you're trying to reach out to an investor that you have no connection with, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, quite the opposite, but be prepared to follow up regularly multiple times. My rule of thumb back then was to follow up on an email every 3 business days for up to 5 to 6 times. And what you're doing in there, while spamming those people, is that in a way you're proving them that you're really committed to try to get things done, right? You haven't even had the meeting, but you're showing how much you're stubborn and willing to take that meeting no matter what. It's in hindsight, I realized while I was doing it, some people responded to me by saying, this is not a fit for me, but I appreciate the willingness to try to have the meeting. This is how it's supposed to be, right? So you're marketing yourself even before having had the chance to have the meeting. So don't underestimate that aspect. I was coming from a place where I was worried of coming across as annoying, because I was sending so many emails. In what I learned, at least in here, the culture doesn't take it that way. As long as you're mindful about it, they will understand that you're just trying to take your business ahead and have a meeting because you want to raise money and you think there is something there. So that's that's important to keep in mind. The other important aspect is when you get into this meeting, and with some of them you get far ahead into getting term sheet of an offer, early on I had the tendency to just accept it, right? At least this is money. I know that I'm going to get money if I do that. The reality is that that's number one, another opportunity to show that you still try to make the best interest in the company, but try to fight for the best deal as you can. I was worried that maybe just by pushing back or asking for more, I could lose the opportunity to close the deal. The reality is that they wouldn't walk away from that. I mean, they would take it as a conversation, and especially this country, everything is negotiable, right? Maybe you lose the negotiation, but you should try. And again, it's an opportunity for you to show that you're going to make always the best interest for the shareholders of your company. Always make the most out of your organization. At the end of the day, no one will come here with what you deserve or what you think you deserve, right? In business, as in life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate for. So keep that in mind and don't be embarrassed to ask. The fundraising path pretty much looks like this. You meet with people, you get no, and then you get another no, and then you get another no. Some of them have a different way of helping you say that Like, let me know how you can be helpful, but yet they don't give you any money. But there's one thing that is happening in the meantime, that every single no probably gets you closer to a yes. And the reason for that, as I was telling you before, is while you go through this motion, you're practicing your story. You get to a point where whatever question you're going to get asked, you can probably finish their sentence before they do. It's going to be a question you already answered. You're going to have a way more polished and straightforward answer. You come across as more prepared, right? And so if you have the grit to go through this motion, eventually you will get to the place where at least one person, I think I keep using Chuck Norris as a meme, and I understand that the more I age, the lesser this type of character lands with the audience. There are people that this audience don't even know who this guy is, right? You see? Jesus, I'm that old? Or you're that young? I don't know which one it is, but anyway, it's a popular person. I used to have this was his landmark sign. You gotta Google that. Look up for Chuck Norris, okay? I'll stop using this slide after this presentation. Jesus. I would like to ask you how old are you, but I'm very scared to do that.
Like American thing, and we are Asian. So.
Nah, but I think the age factor matters a lot. Those things on internet are all over the place anyway. There is no geographical boundaries to memes. Anyway, moving forward. But the great thing about what happens after you get someone to commit to invest, though, is that then you get this reaction by the other one you've been in touch with. Everyone is over there. Oh, my boss. Later. Just fired myself. What happened is that after you got the first person to commit to your round, and therefore you have good news to the other investor, it's incredible how they turn their mind way more quickly and fast as you thought it. Because their perception changes completely from being in the place of saying, yeah, no one has invested in this thing. Why should I take the risk? No one is seeing an opportunity. Then the narrative completely flips. They say, hey, that guy is putting money in there. Maybe he's seeing something I didn't see. So that kind of that signal, it's incredibly powerful. And eventually, when you run the startup, you're gonna have opportunities to be in this other mood and not just banging your head against the desk. So it was great. We managed to close the round. Went through a lot of things, good and bad. And again, eventually we managed to land at Apple. When you do this thing, time matters a lot. You don't do a startup on a part-time basis or as a side project. I mean, you don't want to be reckless about it. You start small, but either you do it or you do not. And I see, again, a significantly younger audience than me here, which probably means that you can take on way more risk than I can today. Simple reason, my cost structure as a family is probably much higher than yours with a wife and 2 kids, versus when you're maybe 30 or less, you haven't collected dogs, wives, and kids, possibly. You're in a place where your burn every month is much smaller. You can take on high risk, and you have more time to course correct. I mean, if a startup goes wrong, I mean, it's in the numbers. Most of yours, you're do great. You're much smarter than me, and your company will be amazing. And even if you don't, you'll do another one. You get another job. You have plenty of time to course correct. When you're my age, you need to be more mindful of how you're going to approach risk. So time is on your side. So if you want to do it, this is the best time as possible. I wish I'd started mine earlier. I started mine, I was 29. 6 years of startup, 5 years here. Means I'm 40. I may turn 40 this year. But I started when I was less than 30. And I was in a position where, okay, let's do it. Even if my mom disagreed with that. And still didn't understand what I was trying to do 10 years after that. But that's another story. You're going to take risk, but again, no risk, no reward. There's a lot of criticism sometimes about capitalism, about people getting greedy. At the end of the day, I think greed is the main feature of capitalism. There is no reason to take that amount of risk and kill yourself working 20 hours a day if there is not potential significant asymmetrical upside. And it's important that you gotta move really fast. That's the most important thing. Don't overthink stuff. Just go through the motion. This was my setup in San Francisco the first time I landed here. while I was going through the accelerator. This is an inflatable bed. After 5 days, sleeping in here, it basically kills your back. You want to die. That monitor you see there was, I borrowed for some other people that was doing the other startup founders doing the accelerator program with me, so that I didn't pay for that. This was gifted to me by the person who's now my wife. And this table was the Amazon box that I used to get this shipped. So that, talk about being resourceful, right? So again, I joke about this thing. I was happy to do it. Wasn't pleasant, but still it didn't bother me at all. I was so much excited about the potential things that were happening that I didn't care. But you need to be willing to put some effort and sacrifice into it. It's just part of the story. If you commit to it and you wait, eventually you might get emails like this, and you'll find yourself signing. This table with all the contracts and the provisions was like from here. I'm not fucking kidding. The table was from here to that plant over there. All of that, putting aside. That's how Apple operates in terms of how careful they are on everything they do. So I signed all of them, and after I finished signing all of that, I was officially an Apple employee. They purchased the company, and it's been already 5 years, and it's crazy because it feels like yesterday. Don't worry about failures. You only have to be right once. And again, this is Dropbox co-founder. He knows a thing or two about startups. And there is only one secret sauce, really, which are going to be the people you're going to build a company with. Everything else is, yes, matters, but if you get this wrong, nothing works. Individuals don't build great company, teams do. And again, do or do not. There is no. Does Yoda list resonate?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is popular enough for the audience. Great. But just a reinforcement: if you do it properly and seriously. You want to fail fast and cheap, rather than just have an excruciating journey that you don't really want. Just the cost opportunity skyrocket. You burn more money, and ultimately you still fail. So why matter? That's it. Thank you.